Today we're building and assembling the Tony5 freestyle drone, but more interestingly, we're gonna try to make this a Sub250 drone. So, can I pull that off? Let's find out. Okay, so here are all our parts for the Tony5 build today, starting off with the Tony5 frame. Now this thing is a lightweight drone coming in around 55 to 56 grams, and this thing here supports all modern VTX. Today, we'll see which one I'll go with, but this thing can fit anything between DJI O3, even the Caddx Walksnail, and HD0. So this thing here is pretty cool. Now I've done a full review on this frame, highlighting some of the features and what makes this frame here so special. I'll leave those video linked above and below so you can take a look at it. Next, we have the heart of any drone, which is the flight controller and ESC stack. Today we're going with the SpeedyBee F4 Mini stack. Now I've used this stack in the past and it performs very, very well and has tons of features. I actually have it in my Grinderino build as well. So I'll leave links to both the Grinderino build as well as the SpeedyBee F4 Mini stack down below. Next, we have the motors, which are the FlyfishRC flash motors. Now these are 2004, 2900 kV motors, and these things are light and powerful. And as you can tell by the kV on this, this is going to be a 4S build. But if you're interested in building this in a 6S version, they do have these in the 1900 kV, good for 6S batteries. I'll leave those linked down below so you can take a look as well. As far as visuals, this is always the most controversial part of all of my builds, only because it's so subjective. Today we're gonna go with the HD0 system. Today we have the Freestyle VTX V2. This is a pretty powerful VTX, around 1000 milliwatts, and it's a lot smaller compared to the original Freestyle VTX. Now this setup here does come with the 90 FPS camera, but I do want a little bit more resolution, so I might opt for a micro or nano camera in the end. We'll see depending on the weight. Last but not least, we have all the accessories here for our drone, including the propellers. I have an HQ propeller here. These are a bi-blade propellers, good for efficiency and decent thrust on here. Finally, we have these receivers on here. Obviously, we're gonna go with Express LRS. So I have two options on here, depending if I wanna go with an external antenna or the built-in ceramic antenna. And then last but not least, I do have this pigtail right here. And depending on the space of this drone, I might just omit the capacitor and just go with the lead here with a built-in capacitor. So we'll see if that fits in this frame. So with that said, let's go to the workbench and get all this stuff crammed in here and see if it's gonna be Sub250. Okay, so we're here at the workbench. We have a pretty big storm going out there, so if you hear some wind noise, I do apologize in advance. So we have all our parts here. We have our frame and all our electronics for this build right here. And the first thing I want to do is just test fit this flight controller and ESC stack. So I have one screw here remaining for the top plate. We're just going to remove it and get access to the actual stack or the bolts of the stack. You can hear that rain outside. Now the SpeedyBee stack does have 20 by 20 mounting solutions on here, so we do have the holes here as well on this Tony5, which is pretty cool. Now the only thing that's an issue is that these screws here are pretty short. Now the countersunk screws that were on here, they fit pretty nice, but they're not long enough for an actual stack. Now if you have an all-in-one, maybe the provided screws may work, but all the screws that was included in this kit here was a little bit too short for an actual stack. So I decided to use the M2 screws that came with the SpeedyBee stack on here. Now as you can see here, this is the same hole that holds an arm in place. So if you were to break or damage an arm, you will have to remove one of the screws here for the flight stack. So no big deal, but that's something that's very interesting with this situation here. Now, this longer screw here might add some weight to this whole build. And honestly, guys, I'm not so confident I can pull this off with the 250 grams, but we are going to try. The more and more that I look at this, the more I kind of feel like, can I do this? Can I do this? All right, so yeah, let's try to get this in. Now we have our stack here. And before I solder anything, I want to make sure that these things actually fit in here pretty well. We have the arrow for the forward facing for the flight controller, so that should be on the right side. And then we do have the plug here for the ESC, so that should be in the front. And here's the one for the flight controller. And that worked out pretty good. If you can see that there is adequate spacing in here. All right, and I have a little bit of thread here to actually secure the nuts on here. And since this is a weight conscious build, I'm gonna use the thinnest bolts possible. Another thing here is just, whenever I do a build, is the capacitor. And there might be some space. I think there should be space here. But that's always the tightest part of the build, is trying to put the VTX and then having space for the capacitor. Now, This is a smaller or a very light 5-inch build. And even the connector that came with the actual SpeedyB stack, if I can find it. Where are you? Oh, here it is right in front of my face. Here it is right here. This is an XT30 connector, which is pretty good for a mini stack on here. But this capacitor is pretty big, and this whole setup here might add some weight. So I'm thinking about not using the capacitor, but I also got a backup right here. As you can see, I have an XT30 connector. Same gauge of wire, probably even bigger, but it does have a capacitor built into it. So I'm probably gonna use this right here opposed to the separate capacitor, just to make for a cleaner build and also reduce the weight of this whole drone altogether. This is, so far, just doing a brainstorming here, this thing looks okay. I don't see any potential snags, especially the fact that I don't have to route the capacitor, although there is space for the capacitor right there. All right, I think it's about time I start doing some connections here, doing some soldering, and as usual, I'll do the power leads first. Get my soldering iron fired up as well. All right, I'm gonna go to angle here, see if this thing here takes. Perfect. And that one should be really nice. All right. It's a pretty nice angle. It doesn't touch. That's a solid bond. And we can try it here again with the drone. And I think that's an adequate angle away from the VTX. VTX is gonna go right here. And I am content with that. 20 by 20 is gonna go right here. I'm gonna have the MIPI cable right here as well. Okay, so this looks good. I'm just gonna put solder or tin the actual pad for the motors. All right, those look really nice. And look at this soldering, it looks really nice. Boom. Okay, so the ESC here looks pretty good. Really nice for now, we'll put it to the side. And then we'll start tackling the actual flight control, which is a little bit smaller pads. Typically, some of the more modern flight controls have a plug and play, and that's how they intend this one here to work. The Freestyle VTX V2 has a harness. One end goes into your actual VTX, the other goes into your flight controller, but this one is a mini stack, so there's no actual plug. Maybe they can make some mini stacks in the future with the plug, and then be plug and play. Having said that, if you're gonna use this on a full-size flight controller, just be aware of the arrangement of the wires. It might be in a different order than you typically are estimating or expecting, like the 03 air units. So I think one of the wires or two of the wires here needs to be swapped. But because this one doesn't have a plug on it, I still have to snip the harness anyhow and do it the manual old school way here. So I'm just gonna tin these wires here for the VTX. I'm gonna use UART 1, that's what the SpeedyB recommends. And I think for the receiver, it's UART 3. Okay, it's gonna be hard to see here, but here's the schematic for it right here. It's gonna be kind of blown out, obviously, but they're using T2. I'll leave a diagram of that on the screen so you can take a look at it, but at least we know that's right there. All right, so let's just get these motors out. Now, these are the flash motors on here. Let's see how far this screw goes up. It gets close, but it doesn't touch the windings, so. All right, this is gonna be really nice and stealthy. All right, so I'm gonna put the other other three motors on here, and then we'll come back, snip the wires, and solder it to the actual ESC. Okay, so we have our motors installed to the drone and we have them wired to the ESC, and this thing looks really, really nice. In fact, this thing was kind of easy and kind of a breeze to actually solder, so adequate space on this ESC. So this is coming together pretty well. Okay, so let's put this flight controller back on here and see if everything fits. And I think that shouldn't make any difference here. And then our VTX goes back here and we should have adequate space. So this is looking really nice. All right, so the next thing we want to attach is the VTX to the flight controller and my receiver. I think I'll do the receiver first. So I have two receivers right here. I have I guess a external style receiver. This one here is by Beta FPV. My only concern is that this thing here is a little bit heavier. We're trying to get this drone under 250 grams. And when I knew I was going to build this drone, I also bought a smaller one. This is a Happy Model EP2 with the ceramic antenna. This thing is significantly lighter, but it does work. Now, at this point, my main concern is weight and the overall total weight of the drone. I want to get it under 250 grams. So I am kind of leaning towards this smaller one. So I think I'll install this in the drone, see if I have some buffer, maybe 2 grams or a gram. And if I do have that buffer, then I'll probably put the bigger one in there later on. But for right now, my main concern is weight, and I'll see how the performance of this is. And I'll let you know when I review the drone if this was kind of a bad idea. Now, this is probably the only compromise on this drone thus far, but I do want to get under that 250 gram limit. I am probably going to put some double side tape on it once I install it. And the way I plan to do this is, let's see here, put this down here. I want this right on the floor, the carbon. Oh, building drones. Fun, right? Time to install it on the flight controller, and we'll do that first. All right. That turned out pretty good. Let's start wiring this VTX now. This is the one I have to cut. Here we go, I'm gonna cut this thing. It is what it is. I can probably repurpose this harness some of the time. Let's do it. Whew. All right, let's do it. 9 volts. All right, here's ground. All right, it says yellow is RX, that goes to TX, so yellow goes to TX, TX goes to RX, which makes sense, right? Wow, that looks pretty good. And as usual, like any other build, once the soldering is done, I'm happy. This is it right here, receiver and VTX right here. Perfect. All right, so let's put the flight controller in here. There, the receiver goes in the front. Okay, so a couple things here, which I typically forget. We're just gonna plug in the harness from the ESC to the actual flight controller. So I usually forget that until the end, and not today, we're gonna do it right now. So that goes in right here. All right, that's good. It went into the ESC pretty easily. And if we are confident and comfortable, then we can plug the other end into the flight controller. All right, so we have our flight controller communicating with our ESC. And look at this, this looks pretty tidy. I guess we can put the bolts on here to hold this flight controller down to the frame. As usual, you don't want to over tighten these because a lot of resonance and vibration and information will go to the gyro. You don't want to have too much or have it too tight. Just want to have it snug. And that looks pretty good. That's a hand tighten. I'm gonna use the pliers here and just give it a little bit of a tighten. This looks good. All right, next thing here is obviously the VTX and camera. And I think I will just plan to run the camera wire over the flight controller and then straight to the camera right here. Okay, I need to install this in the back here. Now this has a 20 by 20 hole on the actual VTX. And we have 20 by 20 as well on here. Now, I also want to save some weight with this. Now, this doesn't have any gyroscope or any kind of gyroscopic information going to the actual VTX. And I'm also stressed for weight here. So I have two options here. I can use like the double side tape, or I can just use the bolts and then just bolt it down to the actual frame. Now, typically when I build drones, I want to have it to be easily repairable. So in case I have a crash, I want to change the parts or do some service, so just transfer this VTX to another drone. I can just unscrew it easily. I think with the double side tape, although it is the easiest option and it also is the lightest option, I think is not the best for service. In case I want to remove something or lift this up, then I might have some difficulty lifting this up from the actual drone. So in that case, I am going to go with the bolts. But instead of using all 4 bolts, I'll use just 2. Now, there's no bolts that came with, well, there are some bolts that came with the frame, but it's just a little bit too short. So I used the actual M2 hardware that came with the SpeedyBee app or SpeedyBee flight controller, and then that's what I'll be using here today. Now I also want to install the antenna before I put it on here, because the antenna is on the bottom of the VTX, and once you put this down and mount it, you have no access to the actual antenna mount. So I'm just gonna route it through this TPU mount, and this is another place here to save some weight if you want to save on weight. I'm just gonna install this UFL connector on here. Now these things are very, very delicate when you're installing them and removing it, so just make sure you get it correct the first time. And this antenna is in here. The harness needs to go in next. I think I'll do the MIPI cable first, since that's the harder of the two. Yeah, that's good. Boom, that went in pretty easily actually. Cool. All right, let's put these bolts in here. We're gonna put one in the back and then one in the front. We'll just use 2 for now. A nut on top. I think the 2 nuts on here will give me the flexibility for repairs, and just 2 nuts shouldn't be too bad. All right, that looks amazing. So VTX is in, the camera is here ready to go. Here's your power leads. Wow. Okay, so that's done. Last but not least, we're just gonna connect the camera, and then we should be good to go. And this thing is done. I do want to connect or mount my actual receiver. I'll use the double-sided tape for that. Let me get a scissors. We can cut it up. And okay, so here's my scissors here. I'm just going to cut this 3M tape used for, or purpose for, the VTX. And then the way I want to do it is probably just, yeah, you can see I'm a picky builder. I think I'll do it this way instead. So the antenna is not anywhere near the camera. It's more recessed back. That's the way I want to do it. That's the way I will do it. So let's remove the other side. It's in there. All right, so camera time is the last thing we do, and this should be a wrap. Now, I'm using a nano camera here, and this thing comes with an adapter, so I can step it up to a micro size. All right, so let's see here. Adapter. All right, let's try this one. Definitely not easy. Holy cow, I found it. All right. Not bad, it looks like it's protected too. I'm gonna put the top plate on. I don't think I have anything else to look for. The VTX is connected, the camera is connected, the receiver is connected. It's not touching the camera. This is gonna stay right down here. It's all plugged in. I'm gonna put the top plate on. That's all I got, meaning like it's a victory at this point, I think. I'm screwed. I'll tell you why in a few seconds here. All right, we're almost done. Let's put these other countersunk screws in here. I think we're good. We're at the finish line, guys. Well, I say that now, we'll see. Yeah, it's late, guys. It's late. All right, so here it is, the Tony5. We're gonna have to clean this up a little bit here. I gotta find my tape just to clean this up, and then we can put the props on as well. I'm gonna look for the tape because I don't wanna put the props on and then have the props in the way. So I'm gonna look for the tape, and then we can tape this up. Okay, so I found my automotive tape. This thing here is simply amazing, guys. This thing here is light, yet very strong and durable. I've used it before in multiple drones builds, and it has done a really good job, especially trying to clean this whole thing up. I'll leave links to this thing here down below, so if you wanna buy one for yourself. So let's get a piece off right here. And as we said before, we're kind of weight conscious of what's going on here today. So I'm gonna try to use as little as possible. I don't know how much this thing here weighs. I don't think it weighs much, but I want to save on every freaking ounce on this build. I'm trying to make it look presentable, man. So that's one arm. You can see how much neater this looks compared to the others. And we're gonna do the same here and just clean this up. I'm trying to make it shorter every time I cut it. Oh gosh. I'm just nervous yet excited to see how much this thing here weighs. I just want to get it under 250 grams. Not that it matters. Well, not that it matters for me, but it's just a personal goal. All right, look at these arms. These things look amazing. This drone looks really nice. Look at this thing. Oh man. All right, prop time. I'm gonna put the props on. Do we do a prop in or props out? I'll do a props in for now. I'm excited, guys, about this one. Yeah, one more prop to go. Wow. Here it is. Your Tony5, guys. Get this out of the way. Put this right here. Wow. Tony5. It's done, guys. Look at that. Oh, that's beautiful. Look at this thing. Okay, so this thing here is complete. This took me a while to build. It's just tedious. I want to make sure it looks good. I'm finical or whatever. I'm just tedious builder, but look at this thing. This thing looks neat, clean. So the time is here. Honestly, I've been waiting so long for this. I've been nervous about this. It's time to weigh this thing. So let's get the scale. Oh, let's get the scale. It's zeroed out. Woohoo! Time to weigh this thing. Here's the weigh-in. 25. 190 grams, 91 grams. That's a little heavy there. And with my battery, 246 grams, guys. Sub 250. We pulled it off, guys. I mean, that's pretty tight because I made some sacrifices with the receiver. I have 2 of the 4 bolts. You know, you can put 4 bolts on here for the actual receiver. I think 2 should be enough. And those are pretty much the 2 sacrifices I made for this entire drone. Oh, as well, I have a pigtail here, the XT30 here with the built-in capacitor, opposed to using the larger capacitor that came with this. This is obviously a little bit heavier, so I went with that built into it. So I did save some grams there. But yeah, 246. All right. Oh, I forgot this FlyfishRC battery strap. 250. So there it is. 250. If I want to go sub 250, I can put a lighter battery strap on there. This one here is pretty thick, honestly. Wow. There it is. Sub 250 5-inch freestyle drone, guys. All right, that was a crazy long build here. It is sub 250. Yeah, we're good. At this point, it's just time to fly this thing, plug it in. I want to plug it in right now and see if it works, but I'll leave that for the other video. And everything looks really nice, guys. Very clean, very impressive build, guys. Really impressed with how it looks. So next time you see this drone here, we'll be configuring this thing and then going for a flight, and then I'll give you my final impressions on the Tony5, the 5-inch sub 250 freestyle drone. Now, how is it gonna fly? I don't know. Is it gonna be durable? I don't know. Hopefully I don't crash this thing. But everything here looks so clean and amazing. And this wouldn't be possible without all these light parts in here. Everything from the VTX, the stack. And as I said, you could make this probably a little bit lighter, guys. You could probably make this thing here a little bit naked. You could probably put an analog VTX in there. And the biggest thing to me, honestly, is this stack. If you go with the all-in-one, you might get this even lower. This is a mini stack, and it did work. And I wonder if I did use a bigger camera, like a micro camera, if it would be heavier. I do think it would be, but the decisions I made to make this one here did work out pretty well. I mean, this is very close, guys. So let me know what you think about this build in the comment section below. Is this something that you're interested in? Now, I am making a bunch of drones, or a few drones that are sub 250. That doesn't mean that you can't have your fun. That doesn't mean you can't fly your 3.5-inch drone. It doesn't mean you can't fly your Cinewhoops. And I do have a few drones that, you know, I'll talk about a little bit later that are all sub 250. Here we go. All right, these are all sub 250 drones here, and just because they're sub 250, that doesn't mean that you can't have fun or have a really good image. So we have like the Pavo 20 here. Obviously we know about the Pavo Pico. This one here shoots really smooth video. And we have the Grinderino, a freestyle drone. This one here is a little bit bigger, thicker, but it's a 3.5 inch drone and it weighs the same, I think 249 grams. In fact, this one here is what, 246. And then we have the Tony5, also sub 250. So although remote ID is out there, you can still have fun with your drones, whether it be a 3.5, a 5, or even a Cinewhoop. So let me know what you think about this drone down below. And I really appreciate you sticking out this video. It was a long one, and I do appreciate you guys here just staying with me throughout this entire build. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.